This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop
shank.
off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome to the Sub 70 podcast, at this point, a man who needs no introduction. He's been on, 4 or 5 times. He did play some probably mediocre golf today, had a few cocktails, hit in happy hour, probably extended happy hour. He's back at the house in Arizona, and he's ready to do the podcast tonight. He is a living legend in his own mind. He knows everybody, but no one really knows who he is yet. The one, the only, the great semi-pro, Mike Dominick.
I'll tell you what, that happy hour did run a little bit long. I had 4 drink tickets I had to use up before I came home. And, you told me not to stop drinking, so I didn't.
Well, no,
but,
that would be no fun.
Yeah,
I don't want you sober on this thing. Why would I do that?
Well, 100%. I mean, according to the great Eric Hansen, you can only break one law at a time. So if you drink, drive the speed limit. If you don't drink, you can drive over the speed limit. So only break one law at a time, kids. I mean, that's a semi-pro way to go. Unless you're at Dismal River, then you drive the golf cart into a, fence post and call it good, and walk away with no scratches.
No harm, no foul. I won't say who did that. But you and I are safe on that one, and we will leave the guilty unnamed. Kamikaze shots, what were you doing? Like anything fun? Long Island iced teas down the hatch, partying college style. What are we doing here?
I kept it mellow. I stuck with the Huss Brewing, Scottsdale Blonde. Family's originally from the Midwest, so I stuck with my Scottsdale Blondes. Got a few White Claws for some friends of mine that can't handle beer, apparently, and met some good people, some good business contacts, exchanged some business cards, got to follow up on a few emails, and I do the corporate stuff. But the thing was I had the right out because I'm like, hey, I got to go and be on a podcast. And then that was more of that was when I more became a living legend. The other thing was everyone's in their business attire, and I'm in jeans, hey dudes, in a sub 70 hoodie. And people are like, dude, you just coming off the street? And I'm like, no, I mean, you gotta rep the brand.
Well, and I appreciate it, but also too, you do live next door to Gabe. So if you go off the rails tonight, can we just text him now and have a reserve of a multiple time, PGA Tour winner next door that we can just put him in there versus you in case it goes south? Can I text Gabe to ask him, are you ready as like backup plan B here?
I mean, you could. Unfortunately for Gabe, he's out of town. So, the whole thing with they redid the rules for the what do you call it? The TPCs, where he can't teach down there now, even as a former winner.
Multiple tour winner. Isn't
multiple tour winner.
Yeah, isn't that crazy that what the heck? Let's just put the golf pro hat back on. No joking aside, it's Gabriel Yepstead's buddies with Mike, buddies with me, great guy. And let's just talk about that one. That's an interesting topic. Why in God's name, if these guys are PGA Tour members, former winners, there's that association, right? Why would they not let these guys practice and play out of the facilities, for lack of a better word, that these guys were a part of for, what did Gabe play the tour, 10, 12, 15 years?
I mean, at least. I mean, he would have won, he won twice. He would have won. In his mind, and I absolutely don't doubt it, he would have won at least 4 or 5 more tournaments, but he was trying to play through injury, which ultimately ended up ending his career. And, now he's doing some champion stuff and whatever, but he ended up getting a very mild case of COVID, or as I call it, the flu. And and right now, he's battling with serious vertigo. So he's playing with, those like Dramamine bands on his arms that you wear when you go deep sea fishing in Cabo, and you're half a bottle of Jack Deep, just trying to steady himself. And man, the guy can still play. But going back to the TPC thing, they basically camouflage it that golf is so popular and we have all this other stuff. We're just going to leave it for, guys that are on the PGA Tour or at full Korn Ferry status to go practice there. And it's at the discretion of the head pro and the tour on whether he can teach out there. And they got rid of that. And the thing that it doesn't hurt the PGA Tour guys, it hurts more the guys that have conditional Korn Ferry status. It hurts the Latin American guys and the Canadian guys, which is complete bullshit in my opinion, because, those guys are now trying to find places of practice that aren't your scrub munis, and those are the guys that are really, really, even the Korn Ferry guys live paycheck to paycheck, but those guys are really digging at the heels of trying to get funding and money and travel, and everything under the moon. And now they don't have a place to practice. And it's the main TPCs like, TPC Louisiana, TPC Scottsdale, TPC Sawgrass, where a lot of guys live in Jacksonville, and they now can't go there and practice. I mean, I think, I think it's complete bullshit.
Well, here's the part I don't understand. You've been out there a gazillion times too. They have separate areas for the touring pros to practice anyway. It's roped off.
It's roped off. TPC has a west and an east end of the range, and those, a lot of people like they'll go to the front and practice and do whatever if they want to hit. But when you go to the back, you got an enormous pitching green, you got a private putting green, enormous grass range, and the best thing is, even though it's roped off, there's those stations set up for those guys to hit. They get 2, 3, 4 bags of Pro Vs. And they go back there and they hit in a strip and they take no grass, and it's a quarter full the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. That's just it, right? Like TPC Deer Run. They got the section for the pros if they're out there. That's the closest one to us. There's not more than 1 or 2 guys out there practicing. I know in Jacksonville where you're at, or even like probably TPC Las Vegas, it could be busier. But as you well know, the size of that spot those guys have, you could have 50 guys out there practicing. It would make no difference. It's a weird one, man. I don't understand it. Plus, isn't it kind of cool? Okay, so here's my other flip side of this. If you're going to go pay the $200 or $300 or whatever it is to play a TPC, how cool would it be to say, I was watching Gabe hit short shots, 2-time PGA Tour winner, working with some guys. I watched a little bit, said hello. You see some other guys out there grinding it out, working on stuff. Like, it's kind of fun to watch that stuff. You sort of get a vibe. You watch it a little bit. Like, isn't that good for the branding of the TPC golf courses to see the guys we've watched on TV or whatever it might be, or professionals out there doing it? That's the part I don't understand either. I always thought they'd want the pros out there because of the image it projects.
No, it's great. And there are times like I went down to work with Gabe, and he's talking with Alex Chaka. He just got done working with, Kevin Chappell a little bit, like with his new Mizuno prototype irons that he had, which was cool. You got James Hahn out there practicing. And it's like it's really cool for the, basically the civilians to see, those guys out there, and especially if they're, they're out of town, they're from small town Midwest or, Wyoming or Utah. And they come down, they're like, hey, we went on this golf trip. And, we were watching Gabe work with James Hahn on his chipping and all that. Brandon Hagee was out there. It's like, you love to see that stuff and see them go around, and you can watch, you can really watch the way that they work, and you can take some stuff away from it. Like that makes great memories for guys on golf trips. Right. It's really like you're watching Gabe hit 40-yard flop shots over trees and spinning it back 8 feet. And you're like, man, like that is really, really, really cool stuff. And I feel like they're really taken away from it in a game that you and I have talked about. Pat Perez talks about it, Homa talks about it. It's a game of blue bloods where you kind of, you have the country club kids and the Muni kids. It's like you almost feel like you're kind of harming the game a little more that way than actually growing the game and having some guys, preach excitement about it. The best, marketing tool is word of mouth. hands down.
Yeah, like I said, if you went out there and even, you saw some guys just striping on the Canadian Tour, I mean, you've played in some of those events, those guys can play like that's different. That's a different way of hitting a golf ball than most amateurs. Like, if you're under the PGA Tour umbrella, I think you should have access to play at any of the courses they own. It's all. You're on a PGA Tour. They own it all. I don't understand. I honestly am baffled on that one.
No, exactly. And the thing that, so I did Canadian Q School the first year that the PGA Tour bought it, and it turned into the Mackenzie Tour, and we played Tuckwick Canyon at Golf Club of Morongo in Southern California, and there's 250 guys out there playing for 25 spots. And all those guys, I mean, there's former All-Americans out there. There's guys that were high-level players that maybe didn't get the recognition and the sponsors exemptions when they got done being an amateur. And it's like, there's really good players. It's a great tour to play on. I mean, there's a lot of guys on tour that went that route. You got like JJ Spawn, Xander Schauffele, like those guys went up there and played, and they're awesome. And then you look at the guys in the Latin American, and traveling in Canada is no joke. I mean, it's like $50 for a 30-pack of Budweiser. Like there was one guy I played, Andre Metzger. The guy used to soak his dip in whiskey, and that'll get you turned up real quick.
Should we give a shout out to Metzger, because he's won like 858 times on like the Dakotas Tour. That dude's a stud.
Dude, he's an absolute stud. Could not be a nicer guy. He used to call me Huggies when I first started playing, because he was like 30 and I was 23. He's like, dude, you're just a kid, And his wife could really play him. She played at Texas Tech, and she was an absolute stick. But like he traveled the Dakotas Tour. He knew everybody. He knew the golf courses, and the guy's a great player. It's just one of those things. Like, you see how good he is. He's had Korn Ferry status. Obviously, he hasn't really broken through anything, but you see this guy just running the train on these kids out on the Dakotas Tour, and like, this guy can't even make it. But he's the one that's like got the sponsors, he's got everyone, needs a good place to practice, and now they're sitting there going, hey, you can't come out here and practice. I mean, I think it's flaming bullshit, in order to do so. Pat Perez is not going out to TPC. Homa's not really going out to TPC. I mean, those guys are, Whisper Rock and Silverleaf and all that. It's the guys that are trying to develop and grow their game and get a place to play. It's just sucks.
Yeah, well, I'm baffled at that one. And since we brought up Gabe, in our little world, he's a legend, right? We're friends with him, we like him, but we also have another friend you got to play around the golf with, also a complete living legend, the West Texas Driving Range Pro, J.J. Killeen. How I can't imagine you two.
Oh, man.
I'll use the word Nimrods nicely, playing golf together. It would be entertaining. You guys should have mic'd that one up. He still got some game though, doesn't he? He can. I mean, you guys all do. You play professionally, but JJ
can golf the ball. I mean, he's a good player. As John Peterson calls him, he calls him the mouth breather, and JJ 100% is. But it was funny because I got a direct message from him on Twitter that said, hey, are you going to be in Scottsdale on Monday? And I was like, well, yeah, I'll be there. And I think it was Woody that set that whole thing up, because last time I played with Woody, we were texting at like 10 a.m. And by 10:30, he calls me and he just goes, hey, can we play golf today? I said, well, if you can be here in 24 minutes, we can tee off. And Woody came out and ripped it, and we just had a freaking awesome time. But, I mean, going back to JJ, I think, Woody kind of set that up. And JJ calls me and he lands. They flew on the PJ out from Lubbock, and he just goes, hey, man, and this is just JJ. He's like, hey, we got a car. We got wheels. So where do we go?
So they just flew in haphazardly and I don't know, we're just flying from Lubbock, get some warm weather, and we'll figure it out when we land? No,
so they flew in because their buddy, who is the founder of Sideline Provisions clothing company, basically invented came up with the Guns Up logo for Texas Tech.
Okay.
He's an awesome dude, and so they flew in because they had a meeting Monday morning with Devereaux Clothing in order to get some ideas. And JJ goes, hey, we're flying out, we're doing this, we got wheels. where do we need to go? And I just said, where are you staying? They're staying at the Ritz-Carlton or whatever in Tempe. So I gave them like 10 bars and restaurants to go to. And I said, hey, take it easy. I'll see you tomorrow at like noon. And they roll in. I mean, they were on an absolute all-night bender, drinking, doing whatever, hitting up the clubs, doing what guys do on a guy's golf trip. And, so they roll up, and I said, hey, what do you guys need? He goes, oh, we already checked in. We did this, that. I said, no, what do you need? How much alcohol do you guys need in order to get through this day? And so we went, we loaded up. We took the entire row of Coors Lights and the entire row of banquet beers, screwball shots, all that stuff, and we just went out and absolutely pegged it. And JJ didn't play his best that day. In his defense, he got stung by a scorpion on like the third or fourth hole with his wrist. And, he was complaining about that. I'm like,
how did he get stung by a scorpion on his wrist?
It's really weird. It happens. The last time I saw it happen on the golf course, we were playing as the Honorable JB says, the stuffiest club on the planet, the Estancia Club. And a guy had his bag in storage at our club, and they're just small little guys, and they tend to get in there. And he went to reach into his pockets, and he goes, oh shit, I got stung by something. You see a little scorpion running out and away. It was a light thing, like in his forearm or whatever. But he literally, got stung by a scorpion and played through it. Like, I don't know how he survived. I thought we were gonna have to call an aerovac on him by hole 16 when he was like 6 over. But I mean, it was a gritty situation. But I mean, the guys, they deleted beers. They had a great time. We had a few drinks afterwards. Went to Chinese across the street, and JJ wanted me to fly back to Lubbock with him and hang out and party. And he goes, dude, we'll fly you back at 5:30 in the morning. You'll be home by 7. And I'm going,
bad idea.
Or
maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. I mean, I may have. That would have been. I mean, I could have probably been talked into that.
I mean, I was really thinking about it, but then at the same time, I would have been divorced before I was even married.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, it wasn't in the prenup yet that we basically had hashed out. I should have put in the prenup, hey, you can fly to Lubbock, Texas on PJs with JJ Killeen at 11 o'clock at night and party all night and come back. I should have.
This is what would have happened. They would have gave, PD is now, getting pilot training or whatever. They would have put like a little Cessna, and PD would have flown you back the next day. Bro. That's probably what would have happened. Would you get on a plane with John Peterson in a single?
You know what? I would get on a plane with John Peterson before I got on a plane with JJ.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, 1,000%.
I'll tell you that. No, but so here's the thing. Like I've been at PD on Twitter a little bit because I was in college. This is after I think it was my sophomore year. I started playing golf on the golf team, and my dad was going to go through pilot's training, and I'm going, there's no way my dad is going to fly a plane. There's absolutely no effing way I'm getting in the cockpit with that guy. And he goes, no, I'm thinking I can do this. It's something I really want to do. I've always wanted to do it. I can fly you to your summer tournament. Because, growing up in Eureka, it's a 4-hour and 45-minute drive from Sacramento, 5 hours from the Bay Area. He's like, I can just fly you down to these things and you can go play. And I'm going, Dad, listen, like, you haven't smoked pot since the 80s. And I'm thinking you're hired shit right now. And so he goes, so I'm sitting there, I go up with him and his instructor, who was a phenomenal pilot. And he, takes me through some stuff, and I get comfortable with the plane. And so we're flying to Sacramento. I'm playing the Sacramento City Championship at Hagen Oaks. And we're flying in there. We land at the Air Force Base, and I'll tell you what, I've been over a lot of downhill 5-foot benders in order to save par or birdie or whatever the hell it is in tournaments. There is nothing more scary than flying with somebody that you care about the first time, and they're bringing this thing into a tarmac, going 95 miles an hour. I mean it is, and that's for like a Cessna, like 95 to 115 miles an hour or whatever. But like, you're coming down, you got a crosswind, and you're sitting in that passenger seat, and the wings are tipped to the right, and you're literally looking 5 feet off the pavement, before you land. I'm pretty sure I shit myself I don't know if I actually did, but I could have.
I'll stick with Southwest.
I mean,
Southwest seems way safer. Those things, quality.
The worst one, I mean, we've had some close calls in our day. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I watched Petey's landing that he put on Twitter that his mom recorded, and that was a damn good landing because the wind was coming out of the right and he had to tip that wing down. But when you are literally like you're coming down, I mean, one of the scariest landings we had was Bend, Oregon. I mean, this is also. I mean, we went and landed at Plumtree one year down by Napa, and so Garmin and I can't remember what the other navigation system is, but one of them, the towers update their frequencies maybe once out every 10 years, and we were on the Garmin and we're coming in and I'm just sitting there going, man, like we haven't heard any radio from all 12 planes that are circling this runway, and we're coming down. We're in our half mile final, and this plane is taking off coming into us, and I'm just like jerking my dad. I'm like, hey, we got to bail out. There's a fucking plane coming at us. And he goes, oh shit. So we landed, then we figured out that they changed us. So instead of coming in at runway 24, we're supposed to come in the other way at runway 13. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like this is terrible. But like we're landing in Bend, Oregon, and Bend has a great, really long runway. And we're coming in, it's probably blowing and gusting to 30 miles an hour out there. And we're coming in from the south. I think it's runway 14. We're coming from the south, and my dad has got the wings tipped all the way. I mean, it looks like the wing is going to basically catch the asphalt. And I'm like, I got the oh shit handle that doesn't even exist in a plane, like, hanging on to that thing. And he goes to level out the wings, and a gust of wind comes up and blows us about 15 feet in the air and tips the wings to the left. And I'm almost in my dad's lap going, holy shit, like I need a beer. Like this is not good. So then he levels it back out, tips the wing, lands the plane, and I'm just like, my God.
So we don't want JJ doing this. We'll stick with Petey.
No, well remember, I mean it's 12 hours from bottle to throttle or something like that. 8 hours from bottle to throttle. So you have to be no drinks or whatever the night before, 8 hours until you go. And I don't know. JJ could probably do it, but I'll tell you what. I mean, I think that he would take his flight training course through Top Gun or some bullshit like that, where he's looking at you going, hey, Iceman, how you doing? And you're like, nah, this is not good. Fuck.
Well, the other private jet guy, we got to get to this one too, because this is one I was eventually going to get to. I don't even know how we started with Gabe and JJ, but here we are. The big story in golf, Phil Mickelson.
I just put my application in for the Saudi League, just so you know.
Yeah,
so
I'm assuming
some endorsements on that.
$30 million, you'd be bought out. You would take it and not complain. I'm assuming.
I mean, I'm a good bunker player. There's plenty of sand out there. I think I hit in every sand trap on the planet, so I think I would be okay. I wouldn't go full Sergio on it, and just
let me know when that offer comes over. Up. I'm guessing it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 or $900 for the season is what you'd be paid for. And I don't think I don't know how many. You got like 8 or 9 fans that would probably watch, but if you got to double digits, it'd be impressive.
I would come back with a hell of a tan, and I could market the new sub 70 bucket hat out there.
Or the wedges, like you said, you would have maybe most bunker attempts per 18 holes round on tour that year in that league.
I beat the shit out of my 9-iron in the club championship last week and hitting out of the rocks, so I might need you to send me a new one of those. But it's what happens in tournaments. I couldn't carry my rock club. It sucked. But
all right, the Phil thing. Where did this? Do you think it? Because now Perez is mad at him, and Rory's mad at him, and some guys are supporting him. Give me your synopsis for knowing some of these guys and probably what happened, and how did we wind up here, and how much of it, in your opinion, is Phil's fault, and how much of this was Phil trying to help his fellow players out of some stuff they have probably legitimate complaints about, and somehow it got essentially out of control, and next thing you know, KPMG is saying no mas. Will you give me your 1,000 feet synopsis of this whole
1,000 feet synopsis? I mean, you know me. I say the first thing that's on my mind. It's why I have 3 friends. But I just sit there and I go, Pat Perez says that, he's mad. Phil's made $900 million on tour or whatever. I think Phil's delivery on the whole thing was wrong. Whatever, it was wrong. However, every time you have somebody that's a martyr, something good ends up coming out of it. Okay? So Phil, yeah, his delivery was off, but is there anything that he said that was not wrong? There's, in my opinion, there's nothing that he said that was wrong. Okay? Do the Saudis decapitate you for being part of the LGBT plus minus Q community? Yes. Do they have a lot of screwed up laws with the way that they treat their women over there? Absolutely. And yeah, you said they're brutal people. They are brutal people. I mean, watch the Kingdom of Heaven. You'll see how it goes. But there have been a lot of underlying issues with the PGA Tour and how they pay and handle their guys. Yeah, I understand that they're wealthy, okay? They're in the top 400 players in the world. You show me the top 400 CEOs in the world and how much they make per year. There's nothing wrong with what he said. So last night, I'm not going to say his name. I mean, we had him on the podcast, right? And he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything against it. We kept it very PG. But he basically said, if you qualify for the Masters the week before, and you got to go there and play, guess what? You get your house, which you're going to be in for the week for $5 to $10,000. You can't get into any restaurants. You got, your people are flying in for the stuff. You got to put them up. There's no hotels available. You get your certain number of tickets. You got another 25 people from your group that are coming. You got to go pay for those out of pocket. You probably have to hire a personal chef. You're into that weekend or that week, $30 to $50,000. And if you miss the cut, you're $30-50,000 in the hole. Like, people don't come to Augusta to see Augusta. They come to Augusta to watch Louis Oosthuizen, Adam Scott, Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth. Like, those guys are the product. Okay.
Well, the golf course, but I would argue they like them playing that golf course. I mean, you can't have one without the other and make it the Masters, right? Like, you have to have Augusta, and you have to have those players that everyone wants to see. Totally
agree, but when you get out there and you're like, hey, this is Augusta, we're walking the grounds, it's awesome, it's this, that, nothing against Augusta is amazing. But if you showed up to Augusta and it was a bunch of mini tour players playing,
yes, it wouldn't have the same effect. There's no way it'd have the same effect.
There's no way it would have the same effect. So rewind to 2016 or 17 when the U.S. Open was at Erin Hills and Brooks Koepka won his first major, okay? Brandt Snedeker, there's a lot of other deeper stuff to this. I mean, I basically just know this, but Brandt Snedeker was trying to get guys to basically protest the tournament because the USGA just signed a huge TV contract with Fox, and there was no additional money in the purse. And not to mention, they're taking you to a place none of these pros have played. The nearest hotel is about 35 minutes away, so these guys are commuting from Milwaukee in order to get. Granted, it's the U.S. Open. If I'm playing the U.S. Open, I'm like, dude, I'll sleep in my car in the parking lot and shower there, eat there, do whatever. Like, that's just me. But when you're looking at, like, you have those guys that are the product that people want to come out and watch because they have personal ties, they like them, they hate them, whatever. That's a product. And I think the purse for the U.S. Open, you're playing for a, $30 million purse. Well, the PGA Tour is making $500 million from that tournament. So how do you not have more money that goes to these guys? Not to mention even more money because the PGA Tour subsidizes the Korn Ferry Tour, more money that can be thrown into those purses to keep those guys going.
Yeah, I've always said this. I think, and I don't know the exact number, but it should be something like I know, like, to play the Korn Ferry Tour and to do it professionally well, it's about $175,000 a year. 160, 175 with a caddy, travel, decent meals. I'm not talking 5-star Michelin dining and stuff, but I mean, like,
Applebee's, bro.
Yeah,
Applebee's.
but literally, I mean, right? You're not playing the tour for $165,000 a year. Living like a billionaire, right? You're not. That's just like making it work.
No.
I think you should get like $10,000 if you miss the cut on the Korn Ferry Tour and like $25,000 or $30,000 on the PGA Tour. I don't understand how they make money off both of those tours. It's all one product. It's a feeder system in. So essentially, it's your talent coming up. And the TV contracts, now there's PGA Tour Live for the Korn Ferry Tour. How are those guys supposed to go spend $4,000 that week, lose the $4,000? Half those guys don't have the $4,000 to lose when you're making money off their ability to play. They're doing the pro-ams. They're probably doing something at night. I don't understand it. And you're not going to get rich giving them $10,000 a week. You're just not.
No,
it costs that much to play. Like I said, you're 160 into it before you start. 170.
Right. It's a slippery slope, right? So everyone on the tour, goes all the way down to real estate agents. Like you're an independent contractor, right? So the cool thing about being an independent contractor is, like, yeah, you get to play the tour, but you also get to go and you get your own endorsements, you get your money, you get your clothing, you got your club deal, which for a lot of guys doesn't pay that much. I mean, there's bottom level tour guys where it's like, hey, yeah, we'll play Mizuno, but they're going to give you $5,000 a year to play Mizuno. Mizuno notoriously doesn't. They make some of the best irons on the market, other than sub 70, and they don't pay their players. So that's why you don't see a lot of Mizuno bags out there. And those guys, like, I mean, we heard it last night on our podcast, where, okay, so you take them and you make them full employees of the PGA Tour. They have the ability to unionize and do what they want to do, and then you take who's your top player on the PGA Tour right now, number one in the world, Jon Rahm, okay? You say, hey, John, we're going to give you $10 million a year. You have, there's 30 to 40 events. You got to play 25 of them in these specific events, and that's it. That is your base salary. Whatever you make on top of that is considered your bonus. But the thing is, like, if you're a full employee of the PGA Tour, are they going to be able? They have to put a clause in there that just says, hey, you have your ability to go sign your own independent deal and say, I'm going to be with Adidas. I'm going to be with Travis Matthews. I'm going to be with Nike. I'm going to play Ping. I'm going to play Titleist.
But this is the slippery slope, because then if they're independent contractors, why do they need to get a release to go play on the European Tour?
Well, exactly. So that was Phil's deal, where he's an independent contractor and he's going to play the match at Moonlight Basin in Montana.
Yeah, you got to
by
pay.
The way.
Right.
Awesome. Right. So here's the thing, though. Like Phil's getting paid a bunch of money to show up. Right. Let's say he's getting paid $10 million to show up. Why does the PGA Tour? Why do you have to pay the PGA Tour $1 million in order to use your TV rights when you're an independent contractor?
I don't know. I mean, that's the one where
it's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it's baffling to me at some level, and I would also argue, Tiger or Phil, realistically, from what NFL or NBA guys are making, they're like some of the most underpaid elite athletes in the world, relatively speaking, right? You know what I'm getting at? Now, their careers are a little bit longer, but they're talking Aaron Rodgers, and God bless him for getting it. He's making $40 to $45 million next year, right? I mean,
yeah.
Like I'm saying,
He's only won one Super Bowl.
Yeah, what I'm saying though is that it's because of the TV contracts and the media rights are so live sports is so in demand, and it's bigger than ever in the different platforms it's going on. I'm with you in the sense of I don't understand how those guys don't have some sort of a base salary plus, or the prize money goes to $7 million for a win, right? Like, because what the PGA Tour is getting from all of these platforms I don't know what the number is, but it's got to be staggering how much money they're making. Staggering.
It is, and the PGA, I mean, they have a great pension program. Like you've heard P talk about it. I just sit there and I go, how come you cannot increase the purse in order to give the bottom level guys that are trying to make a living? Because I mean, here's the thing. I can't remember if it was Pat Perez or John Peterson or who said it, but like they had a buddy come out on tour. I think it was JJ actually. Had a buddy came out on tour. He was really, really good. Got in the bright lights, shit the bed, and he was out $120,000 traveling for the year. And you're on a tour that allows, the top 250 players in the world to play on. Like, you're in the top 250 in your industry out of how many? And in any other industry in the world, whether it comes to engineering, CEO, artist, whatever, you're making a shit ton of money. And these guys are basically out there traveling, playing, they're paying their caddies. You miss the cut, you give your caddy a flat fee. Well, you're still out $3,500 for the week, right? So it's just something's got to change. And the thing is that the PGA Tour was founded before all these huge contracts were coming out with all the other sports. It was, and I think with Phil, he said what had to be said, and other guys, Rory McIlroy, Pat Perez, they're saying stuff, even though he's down did it, something had to be said, and Phil said it, and me personally, I'm okay with that.
Do you think there will be changes from this? I know it's starting a little bit, but do you think 5 years down the line he might be vindicated a little bit of, yes, bad delivery, but intentions turned out to be correct? Do you think 5 years now it'll be viewed kind of differently by the players?
No, I think it will, and I think it'll probably happen in the next year or two, because the Saudi League, Greg Norman, it's not the only time he's collapsed on a Sunday. We all know that. But I deep down, I really think that the PGA Tour has to look at this and meet with the players and say, okay, listen, this was brought to light. We don't want you guys going to Saudi Arabia. What can we do to make this better? And if all of that comes out from it, then Phil's going to come out of it looking like a hero, a martyr, Jesus Christ, whatever you want to call him. He's going to end up looking like that, because the Saudi Tour, even though they didn't get it the first round, I don't think that they're done. I think they're going to sit there and say, hey, here's the money we're able to put out. You can play majors. You can go travel to WGCs. You can do all sorts of, because the PGA Tour, back when Norman was playing, I think it may have been Jay Monahan. He basically pitched the WGC idea to Jay Monahan. It was
to Dean Beeman, I believe. It was Tim Fincham. Sorry, Fincham. Tim Fincham. Yeah.
Yes. Who the fuck is Jay Monahan? So they pitched it to Tim Fincham, and Fincham basically said, we're not going to do that. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, you got the WGCs coming out. So he completely stole his idea. I understand why Greg Norman is pissed. Like, I would be pissed too. Like, that's like me telling you I literally have the cure for cancer, and then you say, no, it's not going to work, and then you go develop by yourself and make millions of dollars off it.
Yeah, Norman's been fighting the PGA Tour since that whole thing. At some level, whatever, taking whatever you feel about Greg Norman out of it, they did kind of take his idea of getting the best players at 4 or 5 events a year, which he wanted to do, and it's sort of like a super league. That's what the WGCs are, or that's essentially kind of what the European Tour did with the Rolex Series. So I can see where he's been fighting this battle for 25 years or whatever at this point. So he's probably not going to. He has.
My last thought on this, I think if the Saudi League, so this goes back to the MENA tour, right? This is the Middle East North African tour, and I got one of this when I was playing in it was 2014 or 15, where it's all oil money. You basically had a $50 entry fee. You got to travel to Middle East North Africa. And it's all oil money that you're playing for. The only thing was that they didn't have world ranking points.
Right.
So you go over there, you play for huge person stuff, but there's no way in order to graduate to the next level. So if the Saudi Golf League, the SGL, can find a way somehow with the PGA Tour or
they did
the RNA.
The Asian Tour is what they were trying to work with. Then you'd get the points.
Well, yeah, then you get the points, i.e.
Right.
BJ Singh. So if they could find a way to work with them and get world ranking points, but those guys would be qualified in order to play in majors, then I think that they would go. Because at the end of the day, like, you're trying to feed your family. Like, you talk to Danny Woodhead, right? And JB asked a great question to Danny one time, and he goes, Danny, would you rather have played 10, 11 years in the NFL with what you did, or would you have rather played 5 years and won a Super Bowl? And he goes, 10, 11 years, no doubt about it. Because you get the money in your contracts in order to feed your family. Like, that is what you're trying to do.
Well, especially for those guys, 'cause it's always the second contract and the third contract. The first one isn't that hot. You got to go earn. Yeah, it's the second and third ones, which, you know, he earned his way to do that. So, yeah, makes sense.
No, totally. But like again, just closing on that topic, I mean, I don't think anything that Phil said was wrong. Unfortunately, like, KPMG now sits there. I mean, they're a global company, and they go, well, you know, we don't stand by Phil's contract or comments because we got to protect our contracts that we have abroad and yada yada yada, right? And Phil, I mean, you know, he's made enough money in his career. He doesn't need KPMG or anything like that in order to float his boat. But, you know, that's just what happens when you get into that corporate world. You can't say anything that crosses state lines. And Phil was kind of saying stuff like that. And so, yeah, like, he lost all of his sponsors and this and that. But, I mean, is what he said was wrong? Is what he said was not on a lot of people's mind, including probably 3/4 of the PGA Tour? No. So the fact that, like, Rory and those guys, and this is my opinion, Rory and those guys went out, and here's the thing. What pissed me off about Rory's comment is he goes, I don't want to kick a guy when he's down, but then he went and did it, and then he rubbed dirt in his eye. Like that was what my issue was with Rory's comment. Like, if Rory said, hey, I don't want to kick a guy when he's down, he would have said, I don't want to kick a guy when he's down. I'll touch on this at a later point. That's what I would have said.
I don't know. To me, there's fraternity, and those guys it's usually a pretty tight fraternity. You know, you don't throw a fraternity brother under the bus. That would be my take on it. Right?
No, exactly. You wouldn't throw Blaze under the bus.
No.
If he wore blue one day.
No. I mean, but I'm, you know, that's my personality. I got, you know, my guys. Those are my guys, friends in life and stuff. No, I would take a bullet for the guys, and I'd go pick them up in the middle of Montana. So if there was ever a controversy, even if I disagreed with them, then I might not say anything, or I would just say, well, they're entitled to their opinion. I would not throw one of my frat brothers under the bus publicly.
No, I wouldn't either. And over the longevity of things, Phil Mickelson has done a lot more for golf. I mean, in my opinion, Phil Mickelson has done a lot more for golf than Rory McIlroy.
Oh, he's brought more. He's brought more people. He's more dynamic. People just. I mean, for Phil, it's either it's going to be great, it's going to be a disaster, but it's going to be interesting. So you're right. I mean, you got Mr. Palmer, you got Mr. Nicklaus, Mr. Hogan, then that, you know, Tiger and Phil from that next generation. You know, there's Norman and those guys and stuff in between it, but you know, from the 90s on up, the two biggest guys that got the purses where they're at, from where they started in the early 90s to where they're at, is everyone should be thanking Tiger and Phil. I mean,
everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil got started when he was at Arizona State, hitting those flop shots over his shoulder on number, I think it was 4 at ASU Carson. I mean, 4 or 5 or whatever that hole was before they blew it up, thank God. But
those two guys have brought a lot of money from corporate America and golf fans and TV coverage. They just have, right? And Phil's a little bit of, you know, it's always going to be interesting, right? He might win, he might blow up, he might see something crazy, he might do something crazy, but people watch it.
But people watch it, and people want to see flop shots. They want to see going for it. They want to see, I mean, him hitting it off the wires at Pebble Beach in the U.S. Open that one year because he thought he could get more spin on the ball. That's just the way that the guy thinks, you know. And obviously he had a different regiment than Tiger did. But if you were going to say, hey, who's been the biggest golf influence in the last 25 years?
It's Tiger and
over
Phil.
Anybody, it would be Tiger and Phil.
Yeah, it's not even close.
I mean, Rory, yeah, and here's the thing. Rory is a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal guy. He's very politically correct with what he answers. But I know Rory's won 4 majors. I really think Rory, I think almost like to this point, the game has caught up with him a little bit because the guy hits it so good. And everybody was ragging on his putting. Well, here's the thing, dude. When you hit 16 greens around and your prox is within 20 feet, guess what? You have more opportunities to make birdies and you're going to miss more putts.
Right.
It's a camouflage fact. And Rory, yeah, he blew onto the scene. I mean, he's a great player. He's a great dude, kind of. But it's like, you know, you look at Tiger and Phil and what they've done. I mean, they basically took the reins from Palmer and Hogan and Faldo and all these guys, and they
Norman
just made the game exciting.
From that
Norman,
generation,
Seve.
right? Yeah, I mean, Tiger was kind of the next Greg Norman of who would. Well, they both were, Tiger and Phil, right? They'd go after it. They had a persona, kind of lived larger than life. Like Norman kind of passed that aggressive play, working out, at least on the Tiger side, but Phil playing kind of like Norman, where they would kind of play very aggressive, right? Like they handed that mantle to those two guys, and they ran with it. Yeah, those guys should all be thanking Tiger and Phil. Hey, before we get out of here, otherwise we're going to talk for like 3 hours, which is easy to do.
I love that about you.
You and JB are doing a podcast. So what inspired you guys to do it besides the Sub 70 podcast, which I'm assuming is a massive influence in your life, and you're welcome for that. And then, you know, how do you see, well, first off, where can people find the podcast? You know, all that good stuff. And then how are you guys trying to, I don't know, make it a little bit different, make it interesting? What's sort of your game plan for this thing?
So basically, like I mean, I kind of got the idea from doing the podcast with you because it was so enjoyable. I'm like, you know, you can come out here, you can kind of
until this episode,
speak your mind. Until this episode,
right.
Yeah. Like I got a lot of contracts out there, so I have to keep it like really on the down low. Like I can't tell you all the adventures of Scott Niedergang and Violent J Armour down in Scottsdale, but you know, like. It was one of those things, like, I started doing it with you, and I looked at Melissa, and I just go, man, I really, like, that was a lot of fun. Just being able to go out there and talk and ask questions and do whatever, because, like me, when I was playing, people always ask you, and they go, hey, like, if you weren't playing golf, what would you be doing? And you always get those questions, right? And it's like, it's almost like you're getting interviewed. And JB, I mean, he's been in radio for, God, how old is he now? I mean, he's older than shit.
He's old.
But
he's like my age.
He's
old.
older.
Dude's old.
Yeah, he's old. And he plays even older. He plays terrible. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I've never been around JB and had a bad time.
No, that's impossible.
Like it's impossible to have a bad time around JB. And he loves, and he would meet people, and he would just ask them, like, little questions, right? Like, hey, so it's like the same thing acts in business, right? Like, if you want to ask people what they do, you're going to get a resume. If you ask them how they started and how they got their inspiration, then you're going to get a story. And stuff then becomes really interesting with what people want to hear. So, excuse me. So JB and I mean, we were kind of messing around with it, and I finally looked out. I think we were up at Baywood in California, and I just said, hey, we should start a podcast. Because I say the first thing that comes to my mind, and JB just has that kind of radio deal. And we just messed around with it a little bit, and we kind of got started, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey, you need to dig into your network and get some people on. So we had Woody and Slaw, which was freaking awesome. I mean, like, interviewing those guys was so fun, out of nowhere podcast. Those talking football, because JB played football, was awesome. And then I got Eric Hansen on. And Eric, you know, he pitched, I think, 14 years in the MLB. He was an all-star, played with Clemens, Canseco, Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, he got Bo Jackson stories. I don't know if you listened to it, but his Bo Jackson stories are all untold Bo Jackson stories where people are like, it's like, here's the thing, you think your kid can make it to the big leagues? Listen to these stories.
Right.
Like this guy was phenomenal. And right now, I mean, you can find it on YouTube. It's just called It's the Principal Pod. It's JB Mathers. And we're working on getting it onto iTunes and Spotify and all that other stuff, which is more my department. So I got to do a little bit of a better job of getting that going. But, you know, like we just had Wyndham Clark on last night. His younger brother and I worked together. I mean, Wyndham was awesome because you're talking to a guy, I mean, won a Big 12 championship at Oklahoma State. He won everything under the moon growing up. Battled Maverick McNeely wire to wire in the Pac-12 championships in Colorado when he transferred to Oregon. And, you know, so we're constantly like looking at just getting that deeper and growing it. But we started basically out of fun because I'm like, and no one really talks, and he and I are both in commercial real estate. So nobody talks about golf, football, baseball, commercial real estate. What are the markets doing? Like, we touch on a little bit of everything, and it's non-politically correct, which I think is what a lot of the world needs right now. You know, and it's just say the first thing that comes to mind, and you know, who's your favorite man crush, and go. And mine right now would be Violent J. Armour. I think Violent J. Armour is my biggest man crush right now. I think Blois is a close second.
No one can get mad at you for too long, even if it just, you know, zings out of your mouth and it's out in left field. You know what I mean? It's going to work for you. So I hope people give it a listen. Yeah, my wife finally met JB Mathers when we were out in L.A., and she is like, that dude is the most fun ever to hang out with for a night. Like, we had a blast. Like, we had a group of friends that were out that night, and JB hit us up that you guys are in L.A., and I'm like, yeah, and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, come out and meet us out for dinner. By the end of the night, everyone was like friends with JB and loved hanging. Like, people are giving hugs, wives are giving hugs to him. Like, he's that kind of guy. Like, you cannot help but having a blast. You're like, you smile. When I think of, like, if somebody says JB Mathers, I smile. Right? I love the guy. He's the best. So,
dude, so I remember. We got a few more minutes here, but I got a question for you. So, when we got done with the Dismal trip, and we were doing the recap, and I just said, you know, like, my favorite guy that I didn't know was Scott Niedergang because he just has a good time. He's a solid dude. He went out on his own with pre-cap. I mean, Scott Niedergang is just I love Scott to death. And I asked you, I said, hey, who was your favorite guy they didn't know? And you just said JB because he had the best time out of anybody just being on a dude's golf trip. And when I asked you, I said, hey, can I bring a guest? And you said yes. My first thought went to JB because I'm like, this guy will fit in with anybody.
Well, and his fun is contagious, and that's the best part. Like, those are the best people in the world, right? Like, you just smile with them. Like, you cannot help but smile with JB. So you guys are going to do good with this podcast because I know your guys' personalities. It's going to work well together, and you guys are smart, and there's going to be some fun but intelligent conversation going back and forth. There'll be some laughs. So I'm rooting for you guys. Like, I think I'm going to listen to I haven't listened to the Eric Hansen one yet, but maybe I'll put that on. I need to put a podcast on to kind of fall asleep. It's like my transition into La La Land. So, like, it's just calm. It's nice. I like listening to the podcast, and boom, I fall asleep. So I'm gonna throw that one on tonight.
Eric's a good one Eric Hansen's a good one to fall asleep to. Nothing against it. I mean, he thinks he totally botched it. He didn't. But Eric is so ADD. He says he's every different type of D. Right, ADD, OCD, ADHD, all that stuff, and he's so meticulous with everything that he does. So he's telling some Bo Jackson story, and he still remembers the guy that was warming up in the bullpen in right field as a 26-year-old vet in Double-A baseball in Chattanooga. You know, I mean, like that is how in depth Eric is, and we're going to have him back on because he still has some more Griffey stories, Bo Jackson stories, Edgar Martinez stories. I mean, Randy Johnson stories. I mean, that guy is an absolute
Edgar
living
Martinez,
legend.
Man, could that guy just bat a ball or what? God,
he was good. So I'll say this real quick teaser for those that are listening. So Edgar Martinez told a story. So him and Eric are talking, and Ryan French said this on Monday Q&Info. And he goes, they were talking about eliminating the shift in baseball. And this guy for the Dodgers, screw the Dodgers. I hate the Dodgers. I hope they burn in hell. Fuck the Dodgers. But this guy goes, how am I supposed to hit triples and home runs when they put a shift on? I'm like, well, here's the thing. You hit home runs. Edgar Martinez said if they put a shift on him, he would bat 900.
Oh, he would just
joke.
it to the spot where no one's at. He was that good, right?
Exactly. So Eric goes, what about the other 100 batting average? He goes, well, that's when I punch out.
Yeah.
It's the most honest, arrogant.
He would have, though. They couldn't shift Edgar Martinez. There's no way. I mean, you could shift him a little bit, but if you gave him that much of a field, he would just slap it to the opening and run to first base every time, literally every time.
Right, and you're a baseball guy. I mean, listen to that podcast. I mean, that's just getting started. We could have 7 episodes with Eric in terms of stories. I mean, the guy's an absolute specimen. I mean, he drinks like we got done playing today, and he was drinking a margarita because he was pairing it with his meal later, which he knew was going to be street tacos.
I like this guy. This is thinking.
Oh, dude, yeah, no, he's
next level.
He's a thinker. My only question for you, sub 70 has been awesome. The TA3 irons I got absolutely dialed right now. I got the driver 5 in the bag. I only have 2 ping clubs in my bag now.
Yeah.
What is coming up big for you guys besides the 70? What are you guys working on for the fans, for the viewers, all my boys out there? What's going on with sub 70?
Well, there's always something stuff. We're working on next generation of 699 iron with like the, that's a tough one because like that's a pretty damn good iron. And how do we make that, hollow body technology work a little bit better? We'll start on the driver. Even though the new driver's out, you start on that one right away. Like, I have no idea where it's even going, but we'll work on that. That's a ways out, right? Like, you're always working on stuff. Like anything, the newest thing that I think that's going to go over pretty darn well that's a really cool product, and I played it all last year, is the wedges we're working on with Tommy Armour III. TA designed the irons you play, and I think most all the guys who play our stuff on the PGA Tour occasionally, or Korn Ferry is playing Tommy's irons. He designed a wedge with us, and it was painstaking. Like, we went through, he's tough, and it's good tough, right? Like, painstaking in a good way. Like, he demands that the thing is exactly the way he wants it. And we finally got the wedge where he gave the go-ahead of, put my logo on it with your logo. It's good. It's really good, and it's like all credit to Tommy. Like, this one was his project kind of from the start. So I'm pretty excited about that thing. Like, it's really good. It's really, really good. And it's very like you don't have to be a tour player to play it. It's a pretty user-friendly soul. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just niched for a player of like his level. So that's kind of like the next kind of like thing that's in production that's going to be coming in. We have our 659 irons coming out pretty soon. That's a couple months away. Kind of a replacement of the 639, but it's kind of a continuation, right? It's slight modifications, right? You're kind of staying in that lane. We're always working on something.
Was that the prototype that you had in your bag out at Dismal?
Yeah. I had some.
Those looked so good.
Yeah, I played them all last summer, and we did a few more tweaks to it, but that's what happens from what we do is the day you finish one, like a series, right? You start instantly working. You don't know which direction it's going to go. You start working on the next one because it takes a couple years to get it prototyped, tested, back, feedback, more testing, get a bunch of information from your buddies who play the stuff, then CAD drawings, and the testing, feedback loop, new prototypes. So the moment you're done with something, you're literally starting again, which is like the coolest thing ever because it's fun as hell to do it. So, some of the stuff, like our new driver, like I don't even know where we're going with it. We have some ideas, like, and it's now this summer just gonna be like all experimenting with it. Like, can we prove anything? That one's tough because with the the
So
box.
I got a question. So real quick question before we go. So I basically stole the driver at gunpoint from Byron J. Armour.
Yeah.
Down here, we got some content hitting it off the deck out there at DC Ranch with my boy Charlie James. Shout out to Charlie, amazing dude. Can't hit driver, but we'll get him dialed. So I've played this driver for about a month now. I like it. I love the carbon, the top. I mean, it looks really good. What are you guys doing with the new driver?
I can't give that away yet.
Is it more forgiving and spin less?
In theory, we're probably going to have it's so hard to design a driver for everybody, so we'll probably have more lanes with the next one. So it depends on what model it would be, right? So the Pro would still kind of be anti-left, low spin. The standard model would kind of fit everybody, and we'll probably do something like a really game improvement-y model, which would be like really high MOI, a little bit more spin, right? So for that golfer without the amount of speed to get it up. But you take you design the middle one first, and then you modify that to fit those other niches. So, I mean, yeah, you're trying to make it just you're just trying to squeeze a little efficiencies out of it because you're in a box a little bit with the USGA and RNA rules, right? Like you can't make it hotter. You're just trying to basically have it more niched for the certain kind of player that wants that niche, and then you try to make it, essentially like the mishits are more like how you'd hit it in the center. That's kind of all you can do, right? Does that make sense, right? You just try to make the mishits more like a center hit, and then get the lane that kind of golfer needs to be in. Until they change the rules or there's some new material that makes it completely revolutionary. There's nothing I see on the horizon at this point in time. You're just trying to dial it up just a little bit, slight little increments to get a little bit more out of it. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And the RNA and the USGA, I mean, they're dinosaurs. But
you got to play in the sandbox, right? You got to play in the sandbox, and it's kind of like it's hard, but it's also fun because, like, how do you squeeze out like that much better performance out of something where you're kind of restricted, right? So it's challenging. Like it's fun, but it's challenging. We got some. The team's got some pretty good ideas of like general directions, and we'll start prototyping on the golf. We got prototypes, but we'll start testing it pretty heavy this summer. But it might be 2 or 3 years away before we, at least 2 years away before we do another driver, would be my guess. We don't do product life cycles. It's got to be better, right? We won't bring it out unless it's better.
Well, let me know because we got a Dismal River trip coming up in June. I'm super excited. Anything that you need, semi-pro and the honorable to test out, you just bring it out. We'll put in a session.
I'll bring it out there, and if I want to see somebody shoot 74, slightly hungover from the tips, I got my guy, Mikey D.
You got your guy. I mean, I broke 75 today. 2 of my last 3 rounds. I'm super excited about that. I'm really excited.
What's that?
A lot of big things coming.
What's the handicap at right now at your home club? And no joking aside.
Plus 3.8.
It's pretty solid.
It's pretty solid. Unfortunately, I lost the club championship this last weekend to Braden Shipley. Guy birdied 17-18 to win by 1. Guy played lights out. I mean, he's a good player. Played lights out down the stretch, and it was wire to wire for 36 holes. But no, it's a steady 3.6. I feel like is what it's at right now.
Right.
And
to give me 8 aside, and we'll be fine.
When you establish a handicap,
I'm getting one
we'll
this year.
talk. I mean,
I'm actually getting a handicap this year. I'm actually going to play enough golf. I'm going to try to play more competitive golf this year. I'm getting a handicap.
I put Blois Olson on it. He is on it. You're going to get established down there at Kishwaukee National Golf and Polo Club. My 2 goals are, besides going to Dismal River, is play Kishwaukee National and Minneapolis Golf Club. The Honorable and I are going to stay with Blois, and we're going to drink all of his wine.
He's got a good wine collection. No, I'm actually going to – my wife is actually encouraging me. She's like, you need to take Tuesday afternoons off. Go play with the guys at the club. Play the game that you like doing. Put the phone on silent and go have yourself a day. So I'm going to have a handicap
the JJ
this year.
Killeen special.
Exactly.
The JJ Killeen special, baby. Have yourself a day. Delete a few gold tops. Have yourself a day.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Always entertaining. Your insights are always good because you know all the guys and you've played professionally. You got a good idea of what the fan can think and then what the professional kind of thinks with it. So it's always a good conversation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, on the podcast and working with JB and all that good stuff. Thank you for not being terribly intoxicated for this podcast. Semi-lit, you're perfect.
Bad.
So you were in the zone tonight, brother.
Well, yeah, but I was half a bottle of Oban 14 deep, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad.
It's a good thing. I'm gonna go good.
Okay, you know what? My dad, Papa Senior. He would be proud. The wife just took the dog for a walk without me, and I'm gonna be divorced before I'm even married. But you know what? It's the principle, and it's all for the Sub 70 podcast.
I appreciate it. Over and out. Thanks again, brother.
Over and out.